Mark says he was already nailed to the cross. John says he was still standing trial hours later. Same morning, 2 Gospels. And the hours don't just disagree. In 1st century Jerusalem, the hour itself refused to hold still. Across the 4 Gospels, the most scrutinized day in ancient history is stamped with a numbered hour just 4 times. 2 of the 4 collide. Mark's 3rd hour, John's about the 6th, and there is no clean way to split the difference. Nobody in that city owned a clock. Not the prefect, not the priests, not the garrison on the walls. An hour was a fraction, 1/12 of the daylight, sunrise to sunset, and it stretched through summer and shrank through winter like a living thing. In Passover week, a Jerusalem daylight hour ran roughly 62 to 63 modern minutes, while an hour of the night ran 57 to 58. On this one day, an hour of light and an hour of darkness had different lengths, and both were read off a shadow or guessed. So every retelling that nails him up at 9 a.m. and has him dead by 3 p.m. is converting a shadow into a wristwatch. The year is disputed. The date is a model. The 9th hour was never 3 What follows is this day walked by the only clock it actually had, the sun over Jerusalem, from a torchlit arrest to a burial racing the dusk. Text, evidence, and reconstruction kept separate and labeled on screen. Every conversion declared, every dispute shown. And at the very end, the one measurement of this famous day that 2,000 years of scholarship keeps trying to take and cannot. It begins at a table. Mark's marker is 2 Greek words, opsias genomenes, when evening had come, and John adds the shortest timestamp in the Gospels, and it was night. After dark, the counting changed. Mark himself, 1 chapter earlier, names the night's divisions: evening, midnight, cockcrow, dawn. The 4 watches of the Roman garrison, and cockcrow, Gallicinium, was the standing name of the 3rd, a slot on the duty roster. So when Peter's denial is timed by a rooster, the text may be timing it by the watch rotation, a reconstruction, labeled as 1. The arrest party arrives carrying fun and kai lampadon, lanterns and torches. It is Passover. The moon above them is full. They bring fire anyway. That detail is John's, and it is all the light this night gets. The hours themselves ran short now, 57, 58 modern minutes each. Inside them, the walk back into the city, a hearing at the high priest's house, denials in a courtyard, the watch turning toward cockcrow. None of it carries a number. The first number waits for the sun. Proi. Early. At first light the council confers, says Mark. When day came, says Luke. John has the escort at the governor's residence while the morning is still young. 3 riders, 1 agreement. This moved at dawn, fast. Where it moved to is a question archaeology has largely settled against the tourist route. The traditional praetorium, the Antonia fortress beside the temple, is a Crusader-era identification, and the stone pavement shown to pilgrims there as the trial floor was laid a century too late, under Hadrian. The working consensus now puts the hearing across town, in Herod's old palace on the western hill, where Josephus seats a later governor's tribunal, where Philo places Pilate himself, and where excavation beneath the Kishel, beside the citadel, in 1999 and 2000, exposed the palace's foundations and drains. Mark just calls the praetorium the palace. The judge, at least, you can touch. In 1961, at Caesarea, excavators lifted a block of limestone that had been recycled as a step in the theater staircase. 3 broken lines of Latin survive on its face, a dedication to Tiberius by Us Pilatus, prefectus of Judea. It is the only inscription naming him, and it quietly corrects Tacitus. who, writing some 80 years after the event, called Pilate a procurator. The stone outranks the historian. Josephus mentions the execution too, in a paragraph Christian copyists later padded. How much of it is original is still argued. Then the scourging. Mark and Matthew reach for a Latin loanword, fragilosus, from flagellum. John uses an ordinary Greek verb. Neither gives a number, and the famous 39 lashes belongs to a different legal system entirely. It is the synagogue's limit, 40 minus 1, the beating Paul says he took 5 times from his own courts. Roman flogging had no ceiling. What happened here has a verb, no count, no duration. By mid-morning it was over, and mid-morning is where the two clocks collide. Mark 15:25. It was the 3rd hour, and they crucified him. John 19:14. It was about the 6th hour. And at John's 6th hour, Jesus is still standing in front of Pilate. In seasonal time, Mark's 3rd hour falls roughly 2 to 3 hours after sunrise. John's 6th is solar noon. They don't line up. The harmonizations are old, and each deserves its hearing, because none of them closes cleanly. The most popular says, John counted Roman style from midnight, making his 6th hour 6 a.m. But Romans also numbered daylight hours from sunrise, hora prima, hora secunda. Midnight to midnight defined the legal day, not the names of the hours, and the fix is shakier than its reputation. That is as far as arithmetic goes. Another reading takes John's number as theology. Noon is when the Passover lambs begin to die in the temple courts, and John, who times his whole account to the lambs, may be stamping meaning rather than minutes. Another leans on the small word hos, about, and on the fact that people without clocks estimated in quarters of a day, letting 3rd and 6th blur toward the same mid-morning. A few manuscripts of John even read 3rd. But the manuscript evidence for 6th is overwhelming. Smoothing the difference or something is the obvious suspect. This channel picks none of them. What survives every option is smaller and harder. Mid-morning, on a working day of Passover season, under daylight hours running 62 minutes and change. That is what can honestly be said. And it is the last moment of this day when 2 sources can even be argued into one. By then, the condemned is already moving, and procession oversells what may have been a startlingly short walk. Start with what he carried, which is already a reconstruction. The Gospels say storos, a word whose base sense is an upright stake, and John says flatly that he carried it himself. The familiar image, the crossbeam alone, the patibulum, hauled out to a permanent post, is a modern scholarly rebuild, assembled from Latin comedy, where slaves carry the patibulum, from the timber shortage Josephus describes around Jerusalem, and from arithmetic about weight. Reasonable. Also contested. A 2010 doctoral thesis argued the ancient sources never pinned down even the shape we assume, and the rebuttals run 500 pages. No ancient source gives the beam's dimensions, which is why you will not hear a weight here. The figures that circulate were invented backwards. One name on this road has a possible echo in stone. The soldiers conscript a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, whom Mark identifies oddly as the father of Alexander and Rufus, as if his readers knew the sons. In 1941, a burial cave of Cyrenaican Jews was opened in the Kidron Valley. Inside sat an ossuary, cut before the year 70, inscribed twice in Greek. Alexander, son of Simon. Both names were common. The identification cannot be confirmed, and it will not be confirmed here. But it is the only object on Earth that even plausibly touches a named bystander from this morning. The destination is Golgotha, Aramaic Golgotha, the skull. No gospel calls it a hill. Mount Calvary came later, from art and preachers. The text offers a name and a single locator, near the city, with no distance attached. If the trial sat in Herod's palace, the geometry startles. Palace to the traditional tomb runs about 260 meters in a straight line, a 3-minute walk on open ground. The true route is unknowable. The street grid of that morning is gone, and real city walking runs 1/3 to 2/3 longer than the crow flies. But the 600-meter Via Dolorosa starts at the Antonia, at the wrong building. Where the walk ended is a harder question than where it began. Near the city hides the requirement that decides everything. Outside it, tombs and executions both belonged beyond the walls, which is why the traditional site, under the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, is possible only if the city wall of the year 30 left that ground exposed. The line of that wall, the so-called second wall, has never been fully traced. It is the open question under the entire site. What has been traced since 2022 is the ground itself. The excavation running beneath the church, the largest there in 2 centuries, reads, bottom to top, an Iron Age limestone quarry. Then farmed soil spread over the worked-out rock, holding olive pits, grape seeds, and pollen. Then 1st century tombs, cut into the old quarry faces. Then Hadrian's pagan rebuild. Then Constantine. John's throwaway line, a garden in that place, and in the garden a new tomb, sits oddly comfortably on a quarry that became a plot that became a cemetery. Comfortable is not proven. The radiocarbon on that soil had not been run when the dig's director last spoke on record. So the headlines announcing plant remains dated to the spring of 33 AD describe a test that hadn't happened, with a precision the method cannot deliver anyway. The rival site fails older tests. The garden tomb, proposed in 1883, has been dated by one specialist to the Iron Age and by another to the Hellenistic centuries. 2 readings that contradict each other and still agree on the verdict. Whatever it is not a new tomb of the 1st century. So, a candidacy, not a proof, the strongest on offer. On that rock, mid-morning, the soldiers go to work. The execution detail is 4 men. John counts them by their loot, the clothes split into 4 parts, to each soldier a part. 4 soldiers and an officer, an assignment, not an event. They offer drugged wine at the start, though the sources disagree on the drug. Wine with myrrh in Mark, wine with gall in Matthew. What the soldiers drink themselves and later hoist up on a reed is oxos, sour ration wine, posca, the standard field drink of the Roman army. Older Bibles rendered it vinegar and made the gesture a taunt. It may simply have been the canteen. The men on the flanking crosses are lestai. Thieves, said the old translations, but Josephus uses the word for armed insurgents, and Rome did not crucify pickpockets. Whether Mark means rebels is argued, and it decides who shared the hill. Their traditional names, Dismas and Gestas, arrive centuries later in an apocryphal gospel. On the act itself, the text goes nearly silent. No nail count. John mentions nail marks, plural in the hands, and only the hands. Luke's risen Jesus shows hands and feet without a word about nails through them. No shape for the cross, no height. Even the modern correction you have heard, through the wrists, not the palms, is not a discovery. It comes from cadaver experiments in the 1930s. It has been contested experimentally since, and ancient writers counted the wrist as part of the hand anyway. The pierced palms, the 3 falls, Veronica and her veil, centuries of devotion, painted over a report that specifies 4 soldiers, 2 condemned men, a drink, and a sign. To understand the next 3 hours, the clock has to stop. which forces the only question that matters here. After centuries of Roman crucifixion, across the whole reach of the empire, what physically remains? 2 skeletons. That is the global total. Tens of thousands of documented executions. Josephus claims 500 a day at the siege of Jerusalem alone, nailed in different postures until wood ran short. And the accepted skeletal evidence worldwide is 2 human beings. The first surfaced in 1968 in a salvage excavation in Jerusalem, inside an ossuary labeled in Aramaic, Yehohanan ben Hakol, a man in his 20s. Through his right heel, an iron nail, 11.5 centimeters, 4.5 inches, shorter than your hand, with a small plaque of olive wood still trapped under its head. The first anatomist worked in a rush because the bones had to be reburied, and reported nailed forearms, both heels on one spike, legs broken to finish him. The 1985 re-examination overturned nearly all of it. One heel only, no trace of nails in the arms, the leg fractures made after death, 2 readings of one bone, still shaping 2 rival crosses. So if a video quotes you a nail length, ask whose. One detail nobody disputes. The tip of the nail is bent. It struck a knot in the wood, curled over, and could not be drawn out. That is the only reason it exists, because nails were iron, and iron was money. Standard practice was to pull them for reuse. The second case makes the point twice over. Fenstanton, England, dug in 2017, published in 2021. A man of 25 to 35, shins thinned in a pattern consistent with years in shackles, and through his right heel, a nail the length of a thumb, 5 centimeters, with a shallower dent beside it, where the first hammer strike missed. The 12 other nails in his grave belonged to the boards he was buried on. 2 more candidates, in Italy and Egypt, show heel damage, but no nail. Unproven. Read the pattern. The entire physical archive of Rome's signature punishment exists because twice the routine failed. A knot, a missed stroke. Everything done correctly was pulled, melted, and spent. And the famous relics fail exactly where these bones pass. The Titulus in Rome, by tradition, the headboard itself. Radiocarbon dates to the Middle Ages, 10th to 12th century. The Shroud of Turin's 1988 measurement reads 1260 to 1390. The result is contested, but under this channel's rules, the cloth cannot testify about 1st century method either way. The nails from Caiaphas' tomb, announced on television in 2011, have no documented provenance and were rejected by the Antiquities Authority and by the scholars who handled the tomb's finds. Of the man himself, no object, no bone, no fiber, nothing. Back on the hill, the shadow keeps shrinking toward noon. At the 6th hour, 3 Gospels report darkness over the land, holding until the 9th, roughly 3 seasonal hours of midday, gone dark. Whatever it was not a solar eclipse. Passover rides the full moon. A solar eclipse demands a new one, and totality lasts minutes, not 3 hours. The astronomy is closed. Everything else stays open. A Khamsin wind hauling desert dust, dense cloud, or something the sources record that no natural cause has ever explained. No outside contemporary records it. The 2 pagan writers sometimes cited survive only second-hand, in later Christian quotation. At the 9th hour, mid-afternoon, Mark and Matthew record a loud cry in Aramaic, the opening line of Psalm 22, and then death. Even the last words split the witnesses. Luke carries different ones, John different again. By the day's own arithmetic, he had hung about 6 seasonal hours. 6 modern hours and a quarter. Behind the arithmetic, a man dying in the open air, watched by women the Gospels trouble to name. Even so, it was fast. Mark preserves the tell. Pilate, asked for the body, is surprised the man is already dead. The surprise is the datum. This punishment was engineered to last days. Josephus once recognized 3 friends on crosses and begged them down alive. Under physicians, 2 died anyway. 1 survived, the only recorded survivor in antiquity. What killed him is a literature, not an answer. A famous 1986 medical paper argued shock plus asphyxiation. A 2006 review answered that different victims likely died differently, and that strapping volunteers to crosses proves little. And one catalog of every surviving ancient description notes something quietly devastating for the standard model. The dying speak, breathe, linger, and not one source mentions a struggle for air. The spear thrust with its blood and water is a hypothesis riding on a single verse. On the physiology, the honest verdict is disputed. What the sources agree on is only the deadline, and the deadline is the sun. Opsias genomenes. When evening had come, the same Greek phrase that opened this day at a supper table now closes it, and this time it is a countdown. Deuteronomy is blunt. A body hanged on wood must not stay out overnight. The temple scroll from Qumran extends the rule explicitly to the executed. And Josephus states, in the only half-sentence in all surviving ancient literature to say so, that Jews took down their crucified and buried them before sundown. Whether Rome usually allowed it is a real fight. One side answers that Rome left bodies up as advertising, and that a lone half-sentence cannot carry a custom. The other points to the law, to the scroll, and to a heel bone. Because Yehohanan is the counter-exhibit. That man, nail still in his foot, lay in a family tomb, in an ossuary, under his own carved name. At least once in this city and period, a victim of the cross went into the ground like anyone's son. The burial John describes is heavy, literally. Nicodemus arrives with 100 Roman litrae of myrrh and aloes, 73 pounds, a shade under 33 kilos, not a gesture, a load. The grave clothes, though, split the sources. 1 linen sheet in Mark and Matthew, strips, plural, plus a separate face cloth in John. 2 different pictures. And every painting had to pick one. The tomb, by parallel with hundreds excavated around Jerusalem, is a low doorway into rock, a shelf, a body laid down by lamplight, and the door of more than 900 Second Temple burial caves surveyed, exactly 4 closed with a rolling disc, showpieces of the very rich, the rest sealed with a squared block, worked like a stopper. The Gospel's verb, though, is roll, with prefixes meaning roll to and roll away. And at least one scholar insists the verb should win. Film chose the wheel. Statistics choose the plug. The text is one word. Luke ends the day on a paradox of light. The Sabbath, he writes, was dawning at sunset. The next day began at dusk. The sundial hands over. The deadline holds. The stone goes in. Which leaves the measurement no one can take. Not the hour, the year. Every reconstruction on offer fits exactly 2 Fridays, April 7th of the year 30 and April 3rd of 33, the only dates inside Pilate's 10 years when the 14th of Nisan can land on a Friday. Both are computed on John's calendar, where the death falls on Passover Eve. The Synoptics time the last meal is the Passover itself, and that older dispute has no consensus either. The case for 33 leans on a lunar eclipse over Jerusalem that evening, and on Luke's chronology, but the eclipse's visibility has been seriously challenged, and calendar specialists warn against dating the Passion by astronomy at all. Underneath every model sits the same unrecoverable fact. That calendar started each month only when someone in Judea saw the new crescent with the naked eye, and it added leap months by rulings nobody wrote down. One cloudy evening could shift the whole grid by a day. No equation sees through that cloud. So the day can be walked, watch by watch, shadow by shadow. What it cannot be given is the one thing printed under every painting of it: a date. Measured strictly by the rules of evidence, the most examined afternoon in history is an afternoon without a year.